There's one food that you must avoid in order to overcome Alzheimer's. In fact, I don't think you can actually even improve Alzheimer's symptoms if you continue to consume this one food. With Alzheimer's, we have this fire going on in the brain. We have inflammation, amyloid plaquing, neurofibrillary tangles, which is basically like this big ball of fishing line that develops right after the plaquing. So they both work together. And then the immune reaction to that creates a tremendous amount of inflammation, and all these neurons start dying. But of all the factors that can influence Alzheimer's, positive or negative, what you eat is the most important thing. Here's some information that you probably have never heard before. Insulin is neuroprotective. It actually protects your brain cell. It actually prevents this amyloid plaquing from developing. And it also prevents the accumulation of those tangled type fibers that I just mentioned. There's even therapies that certain doctors use called intranasal insulin sprays, where they actually spray insulin up your sinuses so they go right into the brain. And it's been proven that it increases memory and the ability to learn. So one big factor relating to insulin is that if you're deficient in insulin, your risk for getting amyloid plaquing goes up. What increases insulin? Carbs. So should we start eating carbs? Okay, is that going to help the situation? No, because carbs raise blood sugars, and people with high blood sugar, like diabetics, have a much higher risk of getting Alzheimer's. So this is confusing because carbs increase insulin, and that should naturally prevent you from getting Alzheimer's, but it actually causes Alzheimer's. This is why some people coin the term type 3 diabetes is Alzheimer's. Okay, here's the missing information. When you increase insulin, you instantly create resistance. The body starts to protect you against this excess insulin, and it leads to insulin resistance, okay? When you have insulin resistance, you actually have a deficiency of insulin inside your cells. So more insulin creates a deficiency of insulin. Sounds strange, sounds counterintuitive, but now you know why. Because the body forms this protective mechanism, which is insulin resistance. And as far as how this relates to Alzheimer's, you have the blood-brain barrier, okay, that can actually be resistant to insulin. Now, even though the brain does make a little bit of insulin, majority of the brain's insulin is dependent on what's happening throughout the body. So just as a diabetic develops insulin resistance throughout the body, the brain can also develop insulin resistance as well, especially in the blood-brain barrier. So insulin resistance is the most important thing you need to understand. So many people don't understand this, and they're unknowingly making things worse by feeding their parents and grandparents the wrong food, because the number one thing that will increase insulin is carbs. Okay, I'm not talking about vegetable carbohydrates. I'm talking about sugars, and I'm talking about refined grains, and I'm talking about grains as well. Yeah, breads, pasta, cereal, crackers, biscuits, waffles, pancakes, muffins, juice, desserts, all these things will absolutely positively make things worse. You can't fix Alzheimer's on top of these carbs. It's impossible. You must fix insulin resistance. But carbs aren't the only thing that creates a spike in insulin, okay? And by the way, when you fix insulin resistance, the neurons finally get the level of insulin that they need to help this neuroprotection and decrease the inflammation. Now, carbs in general, especially in the refined form and sugars, create a tremendous amount of inflammation too in the brain. That's in addition to the insulin problem. All these carbs also create a lot of mitochondrial damage, okay, which destroy the mitochondria, which is the energy to the neuron itself, and also at the same time creating a lot of oxidation and free radical damage, and a lowered ability to deal with that, because consuming a lot of sugars and refined carbs decrease your antioxidants. So we have all this inflammation without any ability to counter the inflammation. So what is the most important thing you can do if you have a loved one that has Alzheimer's, or you are starting to develop symptoms for Alzheimer's, is to understand this mechanism and fix insulin resistance. And there are several ways to do it, okay? Number one, you must lower your carbs so you can start shifting your body running on ketones, which is a preferred, better, more efficient fuel to the brain cells. So if you get a ketone meter, you want to make sure you're in ketosis. I'm talking about 0.5 to 3 millimoles. That would be the level that you want to shoot for. Now, you can also increase those ketones by doing some other cool things like adding exercise and adding fasting, which I think you should do as well. But the point is, if there's damage in the brain from this insulin problem and this glucose problem, thank goodness there's another pathway. You can actually start feeding the brain cells. So any patient who has Alzheimer's must be feeding their brain cells ketones if they want any chance of turning things around. Okay, so that's number one, getting on the ketogenic diet. The next thing you need to know about insulin resistance to be able to fix it is that the frequency of meals, okay, the more times you eat and snack, the more you're going to raise insulin, okay? So you also must do intermittent fasting. And if you have signs of Alzheimer's, okay, or you're at risk, you really need to be on what's called OMAD, which is 1 meal a day. That meal needs to be healthy and it needs to be big enough and providing you with all the nutrition, but allowing your body to fast for 23 hours is super, super important because you're going to keep your insulin low. You're going to actually start to allow the neurons to be fed with insulin. You're going to turn around insulin resistance so much faster. So the worse someone has Alzheimer's, the less frequent they should eat. And you would see a dramatic improvement if you did this. So 1 meal a day and make sure that meal is the ketogenic diet. Well, I'm 57 years old. I'm 6'2". I weigh 185 pounds and I can easily run my body on 1 meal a day. Okay. I have more calories, but my body does very, very, very well on that. So anyone that is over the age of 50 really should be considering 1 meal a day simply because we don't need so many calories, especially if you're not doing hardcore workouts. And if you talk about Alzheimer's patients, which are not typically active or they're in a home or assisted living, I mean, they're not burning off these calories. To feed them more than 1 meal a day is completely unnecessary. And unfortunately, they're usually getting 3 meals a day plus snacks. Completely way too much food. Because anytime you have insulin resistance, you're going to be craving carbs and you're going to be hungry all the time. But as soon as you do 1 meal a day, you convert the body over to ketones and the hunger goes away and the cravings go away and it makes it really easy to do. And the fourth thing is to make sure that meal is really healthy and nutrient dense. The next thing you need to know, do whatever you can to lower stress. Stress activates cortisol. Another name for cortisol is glucocorticoids, which has to do with glucose. So in other words, anytime you increase cortisol, you increase glucose, and not because you're eating sugar, just because your body's in a stress state, that can create insulin resistance. That can create even diabetes. So people that go through stress chronically, or they're taking prednisone or some type of synthetic cortisone for pain, wow, it's like eating sugar. There's a lot of things you can do. I just want you to get the concept. You want to lower the stress. The points I just mentioned are like a requirement from any plan if you're trying to turn this Alzheimer's around. And the next most important video to watch would be that video I did on what to eat. Okay, what would that 1 meal a day consist of to be healthy? And I put that video up right here. Check it out.